All right, let's, I think we scared off most of the designers from the previous talk. I think you also see that my presentation won't be as fancy as Robin's, but hopefully that's okay. Quick show of hands, who here is a producer? Roy, you're a producer too. Cool, all right, I bet that if I would ask any of you what a producer does, I'm going to get a different answer from almost all of you. And I think that's good because, you know, we need to be able to adapt to many different situations, many different contexts. Everything is, it depends. That's like the most common question, the most common answer to every question that we ever get asked. So what I wanted to do with this talk today is present things as tools in a toolkit so that you can take those tools and then apply them to your own specific context and your own specific situation. So my name is Jim. I'm a professional AAA game producer. I've done that for nearly 8 years. I currently work at Massive Entertainment for Ubisoft in Sweden. This talk, like I said, is going to be 10 tools. This is not a complete how-to guide of how you should do production, but rather these are things that I have learned throughout my career that I hope you can take with you and then apply to your specific context or your team or your project that you are in. So let's just get right into it. The first one is first principle thinking. And essentially what this means is that you break something down to the fundamentals of what the issue or the problem is. Basically, you need to always ask, why is this the way it is? And not just once. Maybe you've heard of the 5 whys. It's very annoying when someone does it to you. They keep asking, why is this, and why is that, and why is that? But it is essential, and I think this should really be the core mindset that every producer should have. So, just to give you an example, I think many of us, especially if you have been a producer for a longer period of time, you might have heard the feedback from the team that like, oh, we're having way too many meetings. And what I have seen as a response to that is a policy like, okay, we're not having meetings anymore on Wednesday, or we're only having our meetings before noon so that the people can work in the afternoon. And I don't think this is a bad solution, but it doesn't really address why the team felt that they had so many meetings. Like, are they misaligned? Do they not have information? Do they not have gyms, zoos, and museums available? Like, these are the kind of things that you need to figure out on why something is the way that it is. So, to give you the first tool, always start with why. Number 2, no PowerPoint in meetings. I'm sick of it. Look, if you are presenting at a conference like this, one versus many, PowerPoint is the perfect tool for that. Like, you can have all your information there, it can guide you through what you're saying. But if you are in a meeting that benefits from critical thinking or where you're discussing like complex issues or you need to showcase a lot of data, like PowerPoint is not the best tool for that. And I have 3 reasons for that. Number 1 is that the amount of words you can put on a slide is very low. I don't know if you've ever counted it. Maybe if you push it, you can do 100 words. But A, that looks like this. B, now you're all reading the screen. No one is listening to what I'm saying. And this is just an AI summary of the project management book of knowledge, so that's irrelevant. The second reason is that you can only ever use bullet points, and maybe you can fit 5 if you stick to that word limit. But if you have to take your complex idea, that, especially in AAA, that involves sometimes hundreds of people, if you have to boil that down to 100 words and 5 bullet points, you lose so much context, so much nuance, that the core of your message is just completely lost. And then, of course, there's all the fluff, the transitions, and your fancy animations. These are all just distracting from the presentation itself. So what I would recommend you instead is to, if you have a meeting where you have such a complex issue, write it all out in a document, bring this document with you to the meeting, hand it out, either as an actual paper handout or in a digital document if you have an online meeting. And then bonus points if you actually spent the first 10-15 minutes reading it together in silence, so that afterwards, when you start the meeting, you're literally on the same page, and you can always reference back to this document. So, just to recoup, PowerPoint is not a bad thing, but the process decides the tools, not the other way around. Number 3 is the right information. This is like if you are in a larger team and you have people reporting to you or people providing you with information, you need to be especially clear that you explain to them how you do your work, how you make your decision, and what information you need for this. Because if you don't, you might end up in a situation where people either give you the wrong information or they end up giving you way too much information, and then you need to spend your time parsing this information and finding out exactly what you need in order to do your job. So this is on you to let them know what you need. So I've been in the information giver position many times throughout my career, where I would, at the end of my sprint, I would compile this beautiful report with my Excel sheets, my burn downs, my Jira outputs, everything, send it to my lead, and then be like, good job. Until one day she came to me and she said, like, these reports, Jim, they are beautiful, but they are useless. Like, they don't help me at all. I go to my meeting with the core production team, and all they do is just show me what the status is of things. They don't help me get things done. So that's when we started to figure out, okay, if you need to go to this meeting and unblock me, what information do you need? So that's when we changed the report, and instead of compiling all this data and comparing all the statuses, I basically just sent her a brief overview of our risks and what we needed from the larger team. So this tool, don't report only on status, but report on how to get things done. Estimation. This is a huge topic that we don't have time to dive in, but I just want to show you one image that I would love for you to take home with you, and that's this. It's never just the work. Usually when we ask for an estimation on a task, we only ever ask about this stuff in yellow. That's what ends up in the Jira. But in reality, there is all this other stuff. You have the work before the work in between, you have the iterations, the refactoring, the maintenance afterwards, if it's a larger code system. We almost never include this work when we estimate, and this becomes a problem. For example, if you are tracking how efficient your team is and how much work you get done, if you only ever ask for the yellow stuff, you're going to be very disappointed when you count up how much work you get done in the amount of time that you try to do it in. So what I would suggest is to either realize this, know that you are only asking for a small part, and take that with you when you are calculating the efficiency of your team, or start asking for more stuff. Like, does your estimate include an iteration? Does your estimate include a refactor? Did you include for testing? All this stuff. This is going to blow up your scope, but you're going to have much higher accuracy. So just remember this one sentence, it's never just the work. Then we have absence blindness. Absence blindness is it's like a cognitive bias that we as humans are very bad in realizing when something isn't there. Basically, when it's out of sight, it's out of mind. And this is something that producers need to be very aware of, because it is our job to make sure that the team stays aligned, because alignment is always in decay. It's like as soon as you set a goal, like 3 days later, people are already working on other things, because everything is always going so fast. So it is super important that we are aware of this phenomenon and that we counter it. And the way that we counter it is that once we create clarity, we repeat this clarity over and over and over again until people become absolutely crazy and ask us, please go away. So obviously you don't need to annoy your team too much, but it is important that you repeat this so that like the important information, the goals you set together, and the work that you're trying to do together stays at the forefront of the team's mind. So create clarity, repeat clarity. Number 6, inversion. Usually when we try to solve an issue, we look at where we are, and then we try to imagine where we want to be instead. And then we break that down into a few actionable steps. We start going, we track our progress along the way, everybody's happy. However, sometimes the thing that we want is very complex, so we don't really know exactly. In those situations, you can use this tool to invert the problem. What you do then is, instead of saying, this is what I want, You say, I don't know what I want, but here's everything I don't want. That can help you create something called constraints. And if you have seen Fozzy's talk before, you know that constraints can be a very powerful tool, especially also when it comes to creativity. So if you are working with your game directors or your creative directors, and you're trying to nail them down on explaining to the team what the vision is, they can't do it, you can help them by trying to invert it. So like, it's kind of like this game, but not exactly like that. That can really help you try to nail something down and get you closer to where you want to be, especially in the situations where you don't exactly know. This is exactly what happens with those reports that I was talking about earlier. My manager told me, I don't want to know the status. That doesn't help me. I need to know this other thing. I need to know how I can help your teams to get more work done. So we started by saying, here's what I don't want, and then we got to here's what I want instead. So if you are ever stuck, flip the problem around. The next topic is about iteration. So iterate fast, cheap, and early. For this, I want to quickly turn to an example of these two beautiful buildings. The Sydney Opera House in Australia and the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, Spain. I think this is a really interesting example of how iteration works, because in the end, the Opera House took about 4 times as long to build, and it went over budget 13 times. Meanwhile, the Guggenheim Museum was built on time and on budget. There are many, many reasons for it, and if you ever have the time to look into the construction of the Sydney Opera House, I highly recommend it. It's a fascinating read. But one thing that they did very differently is that the architect of the Guggenheim used quick, early iterations. He would take scrap paper, cardboard, and wood to just build model after model until he had the perfect design, not just visually, but also functionally. And this was all happened way before they started the construction of the actual building. And that allowed them to essentially get it done way faster. Now, iteration is nothing new. Like, this is not a new idea. We are all very familiar with how iteration works and that we should do it. I just want to give you 2 common errors that I have seen often and how to solve them. One is that we make our early iterations too big or too pretty. We spend way too much time on them, and then we kind of are too scared to throw them away. I worked with a designer who was an expert in this. He would always make his first prototypes as ugly as possible, so that there was no way that they would be mistaken for anything near the final product, especially when he was doing UI. Everything was bright pink. There was no other pink things in our game, so it was always like right there. You could see this is an early version. So keep that in mind as well. The second thing is that as producers, we don't include these like many iterations into our estimates. If you think back to the slide about the work, if you know that something is going to take several tries, please just include that in your estimate. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's okay if things take 8 days instead of 4 days. Like, if you know these things beforehand, just include them. I've seen it happen so many times that like, oh yeah, this is like 3 days, and yeah, after 3 days you have something, but we're gonna throw that away, so then we have to do it another 3 days and another 3 days. So when you iterate, iterate early, cheap, and often, but also responsibly. Number 8, it's just a point. This is a quote from the 2024 commencement address by Roger Federer at Dartmouth. It's a speech that's on YouTube. I highly recommend you watch the whole thing. In this speech, Roger Federer is giving tennis advice for life. And one of the things that he talks about is how in the 1,500 professional matches that he played, he won 80% of those matches, so 4/5, but he only scored 54% of the points, which is just over half. And then he says, when you lose every other point on average, you learn not to dwell on your mistakes. I think that's a banger of a quote that I really took to heart. I've worked on a single game for 7 years, and when I heard this quote, it resonated with me so well, because that's essentially what it is, right? Game development, I mean, maybe this metaphor takes it too far, but you could kind of compare it to like a very long drawn-out tennis match that just keeps going and keeps going. and it seems like the end is never in sight. What you need to do, and what you need to remember, is that everything that we do when we try things, is that sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, you just need to take what you learned and then continue on to the next part, to keep focusing on whatever is in front of you. Don't get stuck in the past. Don't hang on to ideas that don't work. Just wrap it up, learn, and then move on. Game development is a marathon, not a sprint. We have sprints, but that's something else. Speaking of sprints, Scrum. Why are we still doing Scrum? Like, it's every producer's favorite methodology, but it's also every programmer's worst nightmare. Like, my idea behind it all, and this kind of ties it back to the first principle thinking. Scrum and every ritual in Scrum and everything that we do, it all exists for a reason. You need to figure out what those reasons are, and then you need to be flexible on how you implement them. If your team doesn't benefit from doing the same stand-up every day, where you go over those same 3 questions about what we did yesterday, what we're doing today, then why are you doing it? Don't do it. The stand-up exists to make sure that the team talks on a regular basis, so that they stay aligned on the latest requirements and they can use it as a mini planning session. If you don't have a lot of changing requirements all the time, meet once a week or twice a week. Like, you don't have to do it every day. The same goes for your retrospectives. If only you as the producer walk away with a to-do list of things to fix because the team just spent an hour complaining and putting post-its on the meeting board, like, that's not what the retrospective is for. It's to together as a team evaluate your ways of working and together be responsible for making improvements to how you work together as a team. So find a way to achieve that. Don't just do it however, don't read a single blog on how you should use a ship with sails and anchors and see if that works, but like, find a way that works for your team. If you don't know where to start, it's perfectly fine to do Scrum completely by the book. But then over time, using the retrospectives, find ways that you can improve and find ways that work with your team. Find the desired outcome and then be flexible on how you implement everything. And then the last point, the map is not the territory. This is a quote that I really like, and it comes essentially from the army, where no matter how long you study the map, it's never going to be the same as the territory that the mission actually takes in. Maybe you've heard the phrase as well, that no plan survives first contact with the enemy. That's basically what this is. And this, I think, applies to everything that a producer does. We're not the ones making the game. The team is. No matter how many burn downs you make, how many Jira dashboards you make, how many pipelines you create in Miro, none of that is real. Like, your nice workflow with all your post-its and your arrows, that's not how work gets done. That flowchart or that pipeline is just a representation of reality. And you need to realize this. Like Robin Jan said it in the presentation before this. Are you shipping your documentation or are you shipping your game? We are also not shipping our Jira database. Just because the burn down hits 0 doesn't mean that the game is fun. That's not how it works. That doesn't mean that you don't need to create these things. I think you should. It can definitely help your team. But you need to realize that these are only representations of reality. These things are not real. You must always use them as your starting point. If your burn down starts to flatline, figure out what's going wrong. Why is this happening? Think about those first principles from earlier. Always try to dig deeper. Your goal is never to build the perfect plan. Your goal is to ship the game. And with that, here are some 10 tools that I hope can make you all a better producer. Thank you.
All right. So that filled up the box/kit
Now we're
nicely. Are there questions from the many producers here in the audience?
Perfect presentation.
Yeah,
We have a question over there.
Hallway in the back. No, you're going to shout it.
So you mentioned estimation and your tip around that to try and be extremely complete and think about things that others might not think of or stimulate your guys to think about those things.
Yeah.
Would you say estimation is one part, prediction another? Do you have any tips for going from estimation to accurate prediction?
If I have tips to go from estimation to prediction. That's a really good question. There is one tool that I have used before, which is something called Monte Carlo projections. It's kind of like a mathematical tool. So if you imagine your burn down with a Monte Carlo projection, you can basically project every possible landing spot of your burn down. But I tend not to use it that much because they are always like kind of inaccurate and they might give some false confidence to what's going on. So predicting is very, very hard. It's kind of like predicting the weather. Like you can get only as close, and you're probably going to be wrong if you go beyond a certain point. So yeah, I don't really have a good answer for prediction because I try not to do it too much.
Another question?
One more over there.
Over there.
Make you run for it.
Yeah.
Thank you for the talk. Great tools. As a programmer who also, on a similar note to this question, something that I run into in a small team quite a lot is trying to, I guess, predict the amount of iterations something is going to take. And sometimes you never really know how many bugs you run into or how long a system's going to take to get to work. How often does this happen in like a practical AAA setting, for example? And does it take how long does it take for a team to get accustomed to these things?
Never happens. First time, always. No, it happens all the time. Like it's like in that sense, like AAA is not that different from our other types of development. It's just that everything is scaled up. So like our problems are just as big. Usually what I try to work with, if we really don't know how long something is going to take, then we would just time box it. So instead of saying, okay, I think it's going to be 3 days, we would, if they don't know that, you can just say, okay, let's try it for 3 days, and then we'll see where we are. And then usually within those 3 days, we hope that we can learn. And then after those 3 days are up, we reevaluate, and then hopefully we have a much clearer idea of what the estimate will be.
Yep, I think that makes sense. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Any more questions?
Hey, mate. Actually, yeah, I think you're right. Indeed, a lot of developers are traumatized with Scrum, going from the non-human approach, right? Non-people approach first. So, but of course, say we want to do it right with the people-first approach, but you want to present it to a new team that's been heavily traumatized by previous iterations. What will be your approach to introduce this team? Hey, we're gonna do it now, but now for real, it's gonna be okay. What will be your tips for that?
Yeah, I think my tip for that would be to really focus on the outcomes. Like I was talking with Job yesterday, who sits just behind you. He had a team that said, we're not going to do Scrum. And then they said, like, yeah, we do want to have a regular chat with the whole team. And it's like, that's a stand-up, right? Or like, we do want to do planning every 2 weeks. I'm like, okay, that's your sprint planning. So I think it's important that you kind of like teach them about like, what do you want to get out of it? And then you just, yeah, exactly, you find the way that worked for this team. And then you can call it whatever you want. Like if you don't call it Scrum, or if you don't call it a stand-up, but you call it your daily sync, like for some people that's enough. Like it's the same thing, but it's, it's just your stand-up in a disguise. Like it's, it can work. You just need to work with the team. Yes. The microphone.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the talk. I could relate with a lot of things that you said, but currently I'm also working with a small team, and this might be a very challenging question, which has probably a lot of diverse opinions on. I would like to hear your opinion on the following question. When you're in a small team where everyone is working, or most of the people of the team is working on the game, on the side, not as their main job. They have a main job because the game still needs to be funded until everyone can like switch to it. How are you supposed to get everyone at the same time, keep up the motivation and not have them cancel at the very last moment, but you are depending on them because they are already in part of the team, and they signed up for it, and they say, I love it, but I'm sorry, today I can't do it, and next week, day before the meeting, I can't come there. So how do you deal with these kind of things?
Yeah, that's a very tough question. That goes into a lot of like different topics about like, you know, motivation and organization, and I don't think I have an answer for this. I'm very sorry. I would love to chat more about it later, but yeah, I would have to think about this a little bit. So I'll find you later after the talk.
Well, that's a good question though, because you said you worked for 7 years on one game.
Yeah.
Right? So motivation becomes a factor,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
But it's not in not in the toolbox.
No.
So how do you motivate a team if they're working so long on one particular game?
Yeah. For me personally, the way I motivate myself is I try to I try to personify motivation, right? Like if motivation was a person, it would show up out of nowhere, very excited, and then as soon as you want to go along with it, they're gone. So what I like to do is I like to, instead of motivation, I like to work on discipline. So you kind of like, you make little like deals with yourself, and then you stick to them. And you can start them very small. Like today, I'm going to talk with every member on my team, just to see how they're doing. And then you keep doing that, and then you kind of build on top of that. And if you start to like keep those promises to yourself, that's how you kind of slowly build the proof that you can say what you want to do and then actually do it. And that slowly over time builds discipline. So if you want to do that for yourself, you know, find something that you think you want to do and do it every day for a year, and then see how it builds motivation and discipline and confidence. If you want to do that with your team, you can apply it to them. Like find something that they can stick to, something that they can really like, you know, do every day, and show them, you know, create proof that they can work together as a team and that they can get work done. Even if it's like small tasks, and maybe that kind of ties into like the answer for your question as well. Like you can try to like say something to motivate people, but that rarely ever works. You need to show them that they can do it. So if you've just like, the longer you stick to things and the more you get done, the more proof you have that like, look, we did all these things, we can do the next thing as well. And that's how you kind of just keep going.
All right.
I hope that makes sense.
Okay. And with that, I think we come to the end of your talk. Thank you, Jim Hendriks.
Thank you.